I set the power of attorney documents and house keys on the coffee table between my parents and my sister Bethany, who had just walked back into our lives 7 days ago. "Congratulations," I said, my voice steady despite everything cracking inside me. Dad nodded toward Bethany. "She deserves this more than you ever did." Mom chimed in. "Finally, someone responsible will handle things." I pulled the sealed envelope from my jacket. "Read this after I leave. 10 years of sacrifice, gone in one conversation." But they had no idea what was coming. Walking out of that living room felt like stepping off a cliff. But the fall had actually started 10 years earlier. I was 22, fresh out of community college, with a full scholarship waiting at the University of Texas. Engineering degree, bright future, everything mapped out perfectly. Then Dad clutched his chest during Sunday dinner, and everything changed. The heart attack hit him like a freight train. Triple bypass surgery, months of recovery medical bills stacking up like cordwood. Mom's diabetes got worse from the stress, her insulin costs skyrocketing as her condition deteriorated. I remember sitting in that hospital waiting room watching my parents age 10 years in 10 days, and making the decision that would define the next decade of my life. I called the University of Texas and declined my scholarship. Sarah, my girlfriend of 3 years, cried when I told her I couldn't move to Austin with her. "Magnus, this is your dream," she pleaded, but I was already packing my bags to move back home. Dreams felt selfish when your family was drowning. What my parents never knew was how deep the water actually was. While they worried about the visible medical bills, I discovered the hidden catastrophe lurking beneath the surface. Dad had been covering his pride for years, taking out a reverse mortgage when his construction business started failing. Mom had been using credit cards for groceries and utilities, thinking Dad's business would turn around. Together, they had accumulated $180,000 in debt. $180,000. The number hit me like a physical blow when I first calculated it. Medical bills, credit cards, the reverse mortgage late fees, interest charges compounding monthly. At their current income from Dad's disability and Mom's part-time work at the library, they would never dig out. Never. So I dug for them. I took the power of attorney Dad offered, thinking it would help me organize their bills. Instead, I discovered I was organizing their financial funeral. Every morning at 5, I left for my construction job with Henderson Brothers. Every evening at 6, I clocked in as a security guard at the mall. 16-hour days became my religion. Overtime pay became my salvation. My inheritance from Grandpa Earl. $23,000 I had been saving for a house down payment disappeared into the debt crater in the first 6 months. I told my parents it was for small medical bills they forgot about. The lie tasted bitter, but their relief was worth choking it down. Weekends meant side jobs. I painted houses, fixed plumbing, cleaned gutters, anything that paid cash. While my friends from high school posted pictures of college parties and spring break trips, I posted nothing. I had nothing to post except exhaustion and the slow grinding satisfaction of watching debt numbers decrease. Sarah lasted 8 months before she couldn't take it anymore. "You're not the same person," she said during our breakup conversation. "You're like a machine now. Work, sleep, work, sleep. When do you live your life?" I wanted to tell her that keeping my parents' house from foreclosure was living, but I understood why she couldn't see it that way. I watched her drive away and felt another piece of my old life crumble. The worst part wasn't the exhaustion or the isolation. It was the invisibility. My parents appreciated that I was helping out, but they had no idea I was literally keeping them housed and fed. When Dad's appetite returned and he wanted steaks for dinner, I bought steaks. When Mom wanted to redecorate the living room, I found a way to make it happen. They thought their disability and library income covered their comfortable lifestyle. They never connected my presence with their financial stability. Meanwhile, Bethany sent birthday cards from California. Beautiful, artistic cards with her photography printed on glossy paper. "Living my best life in LA," she would write. "Art school is amazing. Wish you could visit." The cards always included a story about her latest adventure or creative project, but never included money or an offer to help with anything. My parents displayed those cards on the refrigerator like trophies. "Look how successful Bethany is," Mom would say proudly. "She's really making something of herself out there." I would nod and smile standing there in my work clothes, dirt under my fingernails, exhaustion radiating from every pore. Dad would shake his head in wonder. "That girl has such independence, such drive. She's not afraid to chase her dreams." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Unlike her brother who was still living at home, still dependent on his parents for housing and purpose, the irony burned like acid. They praised Bethany for the independence I had paid for with my own. She could chase dreams in California because I was handling reality in Texas. She could be artistic and free because I was practical and trapped. Her success was built on my sacrifice, but somehow I was the disappointment and she was the inspiration. I started keeping a private ledger, documenting every payment, every sacrifice, every hour worked. Not because I planned to use it against anyone, but because I needed proof that this was real. Some nights, staring at those numbers, I wondered if I was losing my mind. Was I really supporting 3 adults on construction and security wages? Was I really covering a $180,000 debt that my parents didn't even know existed? The ledger confirmed it. Month after month, year after year, I was performing a financial miracle through sheer stubborn determination and sleepless nights. I was 28 years old and felt 50. I was supporting my parents' comfortable retirement while barely surviving myself, but I loved them. Despite everything, despite the invisibility and the thankless grind, I loved them fiercely. They were good people who had made bad decisions during desperate times. Dad's business failing wasn't his fault. Mom's diabetes wasn't her choice. The medical bills weren't anyone's fault. I could handle being unappreciated if it meant they could age with dignity. What I couldn't handle was being replaced. Bethany arrived on a Tuesday evening in a silver BMW rental car that probably cost more per day than I made in a week. I was in the driveway cleaning paint rollers after finishing a weekend painting job when this gleaming machine pulled up like something from a car commercial. Out stepped my sister transformed. Designer jeans that probably cost $300 leather boots that clicked against the driveway like expensive music-oversized sunglasses despite the sun setting. Her hair was professionally highlighted, her nails perfectly manicured, her entire presence screaming success. Magnus. She squealed, rushing over for a hug that left paint residue on her jacket. She didn't seem to notice or care. "God, you look exactly the same. Still working with your hands, I see." She said it like it was charming, like I was a quaint small-town character in her cosmopolitan story. Mom and Dad burst out of the house like she was a returning war hero. Bethany. Our successful daughter. Mom actually used those words right in front of me. Dad beamed like she had just won an Oscar. The reunion was all tears and laughter and breathless questions about her amazing life in Los Angeles. Over dinner, she regaled us with stories of her photography business, gallery showings, celebrity clients, luxury travel assignments. "I just finished shooting a wedding in Napa Valley," she said casually, dropping the detail like it was nothing special. $25,000 budget, can you believe it? The bride wanted everything perfect. My parents hung on every word like she was revealing the secrets of the universe. 25,000 for one wedding, Dad marveled. "Honey, you're really making it big out there." "Well, it's all about building the right network," Bethany explained, somehow making it sound both humble and impressive. "You know how it is in the creative industries. Talent is important, but relationships are everything." I sat there picking at my meatloaf, the same meatloaf I had bought, and Mom had cooked, listening to my sister describe a life that sounded like a magazine article. Meanwhile, my own life consisted of waking up at 5, working until 10, and falling into bed too tired to dream. "And what about you, Magnus?" Bethany turned to me with bright interest. "Still helping Mom and Dad with—" "What is it you do exactly?" The question hit like a slap. Still helping. Like I was an eternal assistant rather than the person keeping everything afloat. "I work construction and security," I said simply. "Keep busy. That's wonderful that you're so dedicated to family," she said with a smile that felt patronizing. Not everyone would sacrifice their own ambitions to stay home and help out. Sacrifice their own ambitions. The phrase echoed in my head as she continued talking about her exciting career. She had no idea what I had actually sacrificed. The University of Texas scholarship, my relationship with Sarah, 10 years of my life, poured into keeping this family financially stable, while she pursued her artistic dreams with no interference. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I heard Bethany on her phone in the guest room. The walls were thin, and her voice carried through the heating vents. "No, Jason, I told you, I need more time," she was saying, her voice strained and urgent. "The heat is too intense in California right now. I can't come back until things cool down." "Yes, I know they're looking for me, but what am I supposed to do? I can't just make $300,000 appear out of thin air. My family doesn't know anything about the business. They think I'm some successful photographer. I need to figure out my next move. $300,000. Heat in California. People looking for her." This didn't sound like the successful artist celebrating gallery openings. This sounded like someone running from serious trouble. I lay in bed, processing what I had overheard. Bethany wasn't home for a family visit. She was hiding. The designer clothes, the rental BMW, the stories about celebrity clients. It was all performance art. She was broke and scared, using our family home as a safe house while she figured out her next move. The next morning, she was back in character, full of enthusiasm about spending time with family. But I noticed things now. How she deflected specific questions about her business. How she paid for nothing despite all her success stories. How she kept checking her phone with worried expressions when she thought nobody was looking. "You know what?" she announced over breakfast. "I've been thinking about staying longer than originally planned, maybe a month or two. I've been so busy with work I've missed too much family time." My parents were thrilled. "Of course, sweetheart," Mom gushed. "Stay as long as you want. It's so wonderful having both our children home. Both our children home." Like I had ever left. Like I hadn't been home every single day for 10 years, working myself into the ground to keep them comfortable. "Actually," Bethany continued, "I've been looking at how you're managing things here, and I have some ideas. The house could use some updates. Dad, you should be seeing a cardiologist at Presbyterian instead of that clinic." "Mom, there are much better diabetes management programs available now." She was criticizing my management. After 3 days home, she was questioning a decade of my careful financial balancing. My parents listened intently, nodding along with her suggestions. "I mean, Magnus has done a fine job," she said with casual dismissal. "But he's not trained in financial planning. I've learned so much about money management through my business. There might be better ways to handle things. Better ways to handle things." I wanted to laugh, but it would have come out as a scream. She had no idea what she was talking about. No idea what things actually needed handling. She was critiquing a performance while being completely ignorant of the script, but my parents were eating it up. "Bethany always was the smart one with money," Dad said admiringly. "Even as a kid, she saved her allowance while Magnus spent his on comic books. Maybe we should listen to her ideas," Mom suggested. "Get a fresh perspective on our situation. Fresh perspective." 10 years of my life keeping them afloat, and they wanted a fresh perspective from someone who had been home 3 days and was clearly running from financial problems of her own. That evening, I found Bethany and Dad at the kitchen table looking through the financial documents I had organized and maintained for a decade. Bank statements, insurance papers, medical bills. My entire system laid out for her inspection. "See, Dad, this is exactly what I mean," she was saying. "You have way more equity in this house than you realize. With property values, what they are now, you're sitting on close to $400,000. $400,000. She was looking at the house value without understanding the liens against it. The reverse mortgage, the second mortgage I had taken out to consolidate debt. She was seeing gross numbers without understanding net reality. "We could sell this place and get you into a beautiful assisted living community," she continued enthusiastically. "Something with activities and health care right on site. You'd love the social aspects and you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance or property taxes anymore." Dad was nodding along, excited by the prospect. "We never realized we had so many options, Bethany. You're opening our eyes to possibilities we never considered." I stood in the doorway, listening to my sister plan to sell the house I had been saving for 10 years. The house I had refinanced twice to avoid foreclosure. The house whose mortgage payments I covered every month. She was treating it like a simple asset to liquidate, not understanding that liquidation would reveal the financial quicksand I had been keeping them from sinking into. "What do you think, Magnus?" Bethany looked up at me with bright confidence. "Doesn't this sound like a great plan for Mom and Dad?" I looked at her, sitting there in her designer clothes, making plans with information she didn't understand, solving problems she couldn't see. I looked at Dad, excited about possibilities that didn't exist. I thought about the folder upstairs containing 10 years of documentation, proving that our family's financial survival depended on my continued presence and sacrifice. "I think you should do whatever makes you happy," I said quietly. It was the last honest thing I would say to any of them for several days. The next morning, I found Bethany in Dad's office, talking on the phone with what sounded like a real estate agent. She had moved from making suggestions to taking action. "Yes, I'm calling about getting a market analysis for my parents' home," she was saying. "It's a 3-bedroom ranch in Highland Park built in 1978, about 1,800 square feet. Yes, I'll be handling the sale for them. Thursday afternoon works perfectly." She hung up and smiled at me like she had just solved world hunger. "I scheduled a realtor to come look at the house Thursday. Isn't that exciting? Mom and Dad are going to be so happy when they see what their options are." Options. She kept using that word like it meant something positive. Like having options wasn't terrifying when all the options were disasters you couldn't afford. Have you talked to their financial advisor about this? I asked carefully. They don't have a financial advisor. She laughed. That's part of the problem. They've been trying to manage everything themselves, and obviously it's gotten overwhelming. That's why I'm here to help. Obviously, it's gotten overwhelming. She thought Mom and Dad had been struggling alone all these years. She had no clue that I was the financial advisor, the accountant, the crisis manager, and the primary income source keeping everything stable. Maybe you should review their complete financial picture before making big decisions, I suggested. Magnus, I appreciate that you care, but I've been managing a 6-figure business for 5 years. I think I can handle helping our parents organize their retirement finances. Her tone was gentle but dismissive, like she was talking to a child who meant well but didn't understand adult responsibilities. 6-figure business. The phrase rang hollow after what I had overheard about people looking for her, and $300,000 she couldn't make appear out of thin air. But my parents believed every word, and that's all that mattered for her purposes. Thursday arrived like a death sentence. The realtor, a polished woman named Patricia Caldwell, walked through our house with Bethany and my parents, pointing out features and discussing market values. I tried to stay out of the way, but I could hear every devastating word. Based on comparable sales in your neighborhood, I'd estimate your home value between $375,000 and $400,000, Patricia announced. It's a seller's market right now. You shouldn't have any trouble getting close to asking price. My parents looked like they had won the lottery. $400,000, Mom whispered to Dad. We had no idea. Patricia continued her presentation. Of course, we'll need to factor in your outstanding mortgage balance and any liens against the property. Do you have those figures handy? This was the moment. The moment when reality would crash into Bethany's fantasy. I held my breath, waiting for someone to mention the reverse mortgage. The second mortgage, the home equity line of credit I had opened 2 years ago to cover Dad's emergency surgery. Oh, the house is almost paid off, Dad said confidently. We only owe maybe $30,000 or $40,000. Magnus handles all that paperwork, but I'm pretty sure we're in great shape. Patricia made notes on her tablet. Excellent. So you're looking at roughly $350,000 in proceeds after closing costs. That's a substantial nest egg for your retirement planning. $350,000 in proceeds. If only it were true. If only Dad's confident estimate bore any resemblance to reality. If only I hadn't spent 10 years juggling mortgage payments and refinancing to keep us current. After Patricia left, my family was giddy with excitement. They spent the evening planning their new life with their imaginary windfall. Bethany had already researched assisted living facilities and found one she thought was perfect. Sunrise Manor has everything you could want, she explained, showing them pictures on her laptop. Indoor swimming pool, fitness center, organized activities, restaurant-style dining, and it's only $3,000 a month per person, $6,000 a month for both of them. $72,000 per year. Even if they actually had $350,000 in house proceeds, that money would last less than 5 years. But they didn't have $350,000. They didn't have $50,000. When all debts were calculated, they might break, even assuming we could sell at the optimistic price Patricia had quoted. This is so perfect, Mom said, scrolling through photos of elderly people doing yoga and playing cards. Look how happy everyone looks, and we wouldn't have to worry about the yard work or the roof or any of those homeowner headaches. Homeowner headaches. I was the one who handled all the homeowner headaches. I was the one who fixed the roof when it leaked, who maintained the yard, who dealt with repair emergencies at midnight. But in her mind, those were just abstract responsibilities that magically took care of themselves. That night, I found Bethany at the kitchen table again, this time with a stack of papers and her laptop open to what looked like financial planning software. "I've been running some numbers," she said without looking up. "I think I can get Mom and Dad's finances organized much more efficiently than they've been managed. There are a lot of opportunities being missed here." Opportunities being missed. I sat down across from her, curious to see what opportunities she had identified. For example, she continued, "They're paying way too much for homeowners insurance. I found a company that could cut their premium in half, and their cell phone plan is ridiculously expensive for what they're getting." She was focused on small efficiencies, while completely missing the massive financial obligations that dwarfed any savings from switching insurance companies. It was like trying to lose weight by switching to diet soda while eating cake for every meal. "Have you looked at their complete debt picture?" I asked. "What debt?" She looked up from her laptop with genuine confusion. "The mortgage is almost paid off and they don't carry credit card balances. Dad was very clear about that." Dad was very clear about that. Dad, who hadn't looked at a bank statement in 8 years because the stress of the numbers made his chest tight. Dad, who trusted me to handle all the paperwork and never asked questions because he didn't want to know the answers. "Maybe you should check the actual statements before making plans," I suggested. "Magnus, I appreciate your concern, but I've been through everything. I'm not making changes blindly." Her tone was getting sharp. "I think maybe you've gotten a little too protective of this role. It's okay to let someone else help." Too protective of this role. She thought I was territorial about organizing paperwork and paying bills. She had no idea that this role involved working 80-hour weeks to generate enough income to keep the family afloat. She thought I was clinging to importance, not drowning in responsibility. "You know what?" she said, closing her laptop with finality. "I think it would be better if you stepped back and let me handle the financial management from now on. You've done a great job, but it's time for a fresh approach." A fresh approach. After 10 years of keeping our parents housed and fed, she wanted to apply a fresh approach to problems she couldn't see and debts she didn't know existed. "And honestly," she continued, "I think it would be good for you to focus on your own life for a while. You're 32 years old, living at home, no serious relationships. Don't you think it's time to build something for yourself instead of staying stuck in this caretaker role?" She was dismissing the last decade of my life as some kind of psychological problem. Like I was a failure to launch instead of the only thing standing between our parents and financial catastrophe. That's when I knew I was done. I could have explained everything. I could have shown her the real bank statements, the loan documents, the ledger of payments I had been making. I could have walked her through the maze of refinancing and debt consolidation that had kept us afloat. I could have educated her about the reality she was stepping into. But she didn't want education. She wanted control. She wanted to be the successful daughter who swooped in to save the day while I was cast as the stuck son who needed to get out of the way. She wanted the gratitude and admiration that came with being the family's financial savior without doing any of the actual saving. Fine, let her have it. I went upstairs and started writing the letter that would explain everything she was about to inherit. Every debt, every payment, every obligation she was so eager to manage. The letter would be my resignation from 10 years of financial martyrdom and her introduction to reality. As I wrote, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a decade relief. The burden was about to be someone else's. The crushing responsibility was about to transfer to someone who wanted it. The invisible sacrifice was about to become someone else's invisible sacrifice. Let her figure out how to cover $4,700 in monthly debt payments on their combined income of $2,800 from disability and part-time work. Let her learn about the credit juggling the second jobs, the midnight stress about making it all work. Let her discover that wanting to be the hero and actually being the hero were two completely different things. 3 days after I walked out of that house, Bethany strutted into First National Bank like she owned the place. I know this because Dorothy Henderson, the branch manager, called me that afternoon, with a tone I had never heard from her before. "Magnus, what in the world is going on with your family's accounts?" Dorothy asked. "Your sister just left here, and she was screaming in the parking lot loud enough to wake the dead." Dorothy had been managing our family's banking relationship for 6 years. She knew me as the responsible son who came in every month to make payments and manage transfers. She had watched me refinance the house twice, open lines of credit, and perform financial miracles to keep everything current. She understood exactly what I had been doing, even if my family didn't. "She came in here demanding access to everything," Dorothy continued. "Had all the proper paperwork, power of attorney documentation, the works. So I started pulling up the accounts to transfer management to her." I could picture Bethany's confidence in that moment. Finally, getting access to the family finances she was going to optimize and improve. Ready to implement all her superior strategies and show everyone how much better she could handle things. Magnus, when I showed her the actual account balances and outstanding obligations, she went white as a sheet. Dorothy said, "I've never seen someone's expression change so fast." She kept saying, "That can't be right," and asking me to check again. The reality had hit her like a freight train. Instead of the financial cushion she expected, she was looking at a carefully managed disaster that required constant attention and income to maintain. Then she pulled out some letter and started reading it right there in my office. Dorothy continued. By the time she got halfway through, she was crying. Then she ran outside and started yelling, "You're joking," over and over in the parking lot. Caused quite a scene. My letter. The 10-page document I had spent all night writing, explaining every detail of our family's true financial situation. I had poured everything into those pages. Every debt, every payment, every sacrifice, every creative solution I had implemented to keep us afloat. The letter started with the basics. The reverse mortgage balance of $87,000 that Dad had forgotten about because I paid it every month. The second mortgage of $63,000 that I had taken out to consolidate his medical debt. The home equity line of credit with a balance of $28,000 that I had used to cover Mom's emergency room visits. Then it got into the credit cards. 4 different cards with a combined balance of $42,000. Cards I had opened in my name to transfer their high-interest debt. Cards I paid the minimums on every month while working overtime to chip away at the principal. The letter detailed my income strategy. 68 hours per week at Henderson Brothers Construction, bringing in $52,000 annually. 35 hours per week overnight security at the mall, adding $22,000. Weekend side jobs, painting houses, cleaning gutters, and doing handyman work for another $15,000. Total annual income, $89,000. Then it broke down the monthly obligations. Reverse mortgage payment, $850. Second mortgage, $420. Home equity line, $315. Credit card minimums, $860. Property taxes and insurance, $640. Utilities, $280. Groceries and household expenses, $400. Medical expenses and prescriptions, $320. Total monthly obligations, $4,685. Their combined income from Dad's disability and Mom's library work, $2,760. Monthly shortfall, $1,925. $1,925 that I had been covering every single month for 10 years. $231,000 over the decade, not counting interest, late fees, and emergency expenses. The letter included photocopies of bank statements, loan documents, and payment records. Proof of every claim, evidence of every transaction. I had documented my financial heroics with the thoroughness of an accountant preparing for an audit. But the most devastating part of the letter wasn't the numbers. It was the timeline. I had calculated exactly what would happen without my continued financial support. The reverse mortgage would go into default in 45 days. The second mortgage would trigger foreclosure proceedings in 60 days. The credit cards would go to collections in 90 days. The house would be auctioned in 6 months. Your parents have exactly 47 days before they receive their first default notice, I had written. Without someone covering the $1,900 monthly shortfall, they will lose everything by Christmas. I've been preventing this disaster for 10 years. It's your disaster now. The letter concluded with a detailed breakdown of what Bethany would need to do to maintain the status quo. Get a job earning at least $30,000 annually. Work 60-plus hours per week like I had been doing. Forget about her own life and dreams. Sacrifice everything for family financial stability. Oh, and one more thing. The letter ended. The house isn't worth $400,000 free and clear. After all, liens and debts are satisfied. You might clear $20,000 if you're lucky. But you can't sell it anyway because Mom and Dad have nowhere else to go that they can afford. Congratulations on your new responsibility. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Dorothy finished telling me about Bethany's meltdown in the parking lot. She kept trying to call you, but I guess your number's been changed. Something like that, I said. Magnus, I have to ask. Are you really done with all this because that girl has no idea what she's gotten herself into? I'm done, I confirmed. She wanted the responsibility. She got it. Well, Dorothy sighed. I've been in banking for 25 years and I've never seen anyone manage an impossible situation like you did. But I've also never seen someone inherit a financial nightmare with less preparation than your sister has. After I hung up with Dorothy, I felt something unexpected. Peace. For the first time in 10 years, someone else's phone would ring when payments were missed. Someone else would lose sleep over making ends meet. Someone else would sacrifice their personal life to keep the family afloat. I had given Bethany exactly what she wanted: complete control over our parents' finances. The fact that those finances were a house of cards requiring constant attention and sacrifice wasn't my problem anymore. Let her learn what I had learned. Let her discover what responsibility actually costs. Let her find out the difference between wanting to help and actually helping. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Magnus, this is Bethany. We need to talk. This can't be right. Call me. I deleted the message without responding. My phone buzzed again 20 minutes later. Magnus, please. I don't understand these numbers. Where are you? Deleted. Then, Dad's number appeared on my screen. I let it go to voicemail. The message was painful to listen to. Son, I think there's been some kind of mistake with the bank statements. Bethany's really upset. Can you come home and help us figure out what's going on? help us figure out what's going on. 10 years of managing everything in silence, and now they wanted help understanding what I had been doing all along. Now they wanted me to explain why their financial situation wasn't the comfortable retirement they had imagined. I saved the voicemail but didn't call back. That night, my neighbor Mrs. Patterson knocked on my apartment door. I had rented a one-bedroom place across town the day after I left home. "Magnus, honey, your mom called looking for you." She sounded real worried. "Everything okay with your family?" Mrs. Patterson was 78 years old and had known our family for decades. She was also the only person outside the banking industry who had any idea what I had been doing for my parents. "They're fine, Mrs. Patterson. Just some family financial stuff getting sorted out." She studied my face with the wisdom of someone who had raised 6 children through various crises. "You finally told them the truth about what you've been doing, didn't you?" I nodded. "Good for you, honey. A parent shouldn't lean on their child the way they leaned on you. And a parent sure shouldn't hand that burden to the other child without knowing what they're handing over." That night, I slept better than I had in years. Somewhere across town, Bethany was learning what 10 years of my life had actually cost. Somewhere across town, my parents were discovering what their comfortable lifestyle had really been built on. Tomorrow, they would start figuring out how to manage without me. Good luck to them. 2 weeks after my departure, the first cracks started showing. I know this because Mrs. Patterson kept me updated on the neighborhood drama unfolding at my childhood home. "Your sister's been running around like a chicken with its head cut off," Mrs. Patterson reported during one of our weekly coffee meetings. "Yesterday, she was knocking on doors asking if anyone knew handymen who work cheap. Apparently, the hot water heater started making funny noises and she can't afford to call a real plumber. The hot water heater." I had been nursing that 20-year-old unit, along with periodic maintenance and creative repairs. It needed replacing, but replacement cost $800 we never had. So I had been keeping it functional with spare parts and prayer. A day before that. Mrs. Patterson continued. "I saw her loading groceries from the discount store. Generic everything. Your mom used to shop at that nice market on Elm Street. The grocery downgrade was predictable. Without my income covering the shortfall, every expense had to be scrutinized and reduced. Bethany was learning what I had learned years ago when your financially underwater luxury becomes a memory. And Magnus, honey, I hate to tell you this, but your dad doesn't look good. He's lost weight and he seems confused when I see him outside. Your mom's been walking him around the block every evening, but he moves like an old man now." Dad's health declining made sense. The stress of understanding their real financial situation was probably triggering his heart problems. For 8 years I had shielded him from that stress. Now Bethany was having to share the brutal truth with him daily. My phone buzzed with yet another call from home. I had been ignoring them for 2 weeks, but the frequency was increasing. Sometimes it was Bethany's number, sometimes Mom's, sometimes Dad's. They were taking turns trying to reach me. Finally, I answered one of Mom's calls. "Magnus." Her voice was desperate with relief. "Oh, thank God you answered. We need you to come home. This is all too much for Bethany to handle. Too much for Bethany to handle." 2 weeks ago, she was the successful businesswoman who could manage our family finances much better than I had been doing. Now she was overwhelmed by the reality I had been living for a decade. "What specifically is too much?" I asked calmly. "Everything. The house payments, the credit card bills, the insurance problems. Bethany says she can't make enough money to cover all these expenses. She says you were covering thousands of dollars every month. Is that true? Did you read the letter I left? Yes, but Magnus, we had no idea. We thought you were just helping with small things. We didn't know you were paying for everything. We didn't know. The willful ignorance that had allowed them to live comfortably while I sacrificed everything. They hadn't known because they hadn't wanted to know. Mom, I'm not coming back to clean up this mess. I spent 10 years of my life keeping you afloat. It's someone else's turn now. But Bethany can't do what you are doing. She doesn't have the income or the experience or, son, we're going to lose the house. They were going to lose the house. The inevitable outcome I had been preventing through sheer determination and 80-hour work weeks. The disaster that had been lurking beneath the surface of their comfortable retirement. Then, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't qualified to manage your finances. 3 days after that conversation, Mrs. Patterson brought me news that changed everything. Magnus, there were some men at your parents' house today. Official-looking men with badges and paperwork. They spent about an hour talking to your family, then left your sister crying on the front porch. Badges and paperwork. That sounded like law enforcement, not debt collectors or foreclosure notices. Did you hear what it was about? Well, I happened to be watering my flower bed near the property line, Mrs. Patterson said with the innocent expression of someone who had definitely been eavesdropping. I heard them ask your sister about some kind of investment scheme in California. Something about cryptocurrency and elderly victims. My blood went cold. The phone conversation I had overheard Bethany having her first week home suddenly made perfect sense. People looking for her $300,000 heat in California. She hadn't been running from business debts. She had been running from criminal charges. The men said something about fraud investigation and federal charges. Mrs. Patterson continued. Your sister kept saying she was just an employee, that she didn't know what her boyfriend was doing. But they had paperwork showing she was listed as a business partner. A fraud investigation. Federal charges. Elderly victims. My sister hadn't just been lying about her success in California. She had been involved in something that could land her in federal prison. That evening, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Magnus. This is Detective Sarah Chen with the Los Angeles Police Department Financial Crimes Unit. I need to ask you some questions about your sister Bethany. My sister was under criminal investigation by the LAPD. The successful photographer with celebrity clients was actually a suspected federal criminal who had fled California to avoid prosecution. We've been tracking your sister for 6 months in connection with a cryptocurrency investment scheme that defrauded elderly victims of approximately $2.8 million, Detective Chen explained. She was listed as a business partner with Jason Kellerman, who's already been arrested and charged. $2.8 million. Elderly victims. My sister had been involved in the exact type of scheme that preyed on people like our own parents. The scheme targeted seniors through social media and fake investment websites. The detective continued. Your sister's role was building trust with victims, convincing them that cryptocurrency investments were safe and guaranteed to generate returns. She would pose as a financial success story, showing them fabricated account balances and fake testimonials, posing as a financial success story, just like she had posed for our family spinning elaborate tales of business success while hiding the criminal reality of her situation. We need to verify her current address and activities. Our records show she's been staying with family in Texas. Is that accurate? I confirmed that she was at our parents' house, and Detective Chen explained that they would be coordinating with local authorities to arrest her within the week. Federal charges were being prepared, and she would likely face 20 years in prison if convicted. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment processing what I had just learned. My parents had handed over financial control of their lives to someone who was about to be arrested for defrauding elderly people out of their life savings. They had rejected my decade of legitimate financial management in favor of someone who made a career out of stealing from families exactly like ours. The irony was devastating. Bethany had been criticizing my management while secretly being the type of person I had spent 10 years protecting our parents from. I called Mrs. Patterson to warn her about what was coming. "Oh, my stars," she breathed. "Your poor parents. They have no idea what kind of person they've been trusting with their finances." The next morning, I watched the news coverage from my apartment. Local woman arrested in multi-million-dollar elder fraud scheme scrolled across the bottom of the screen as they showed footage of Bethany being led away in handcuffs from our family home. The reporter explained that she was wanted in connection with a cryptocurrency investment scam that had targeted seniors across multiple states. Victims had lost their entire retirement savings, believing they were making safe, guaranteed investments. My phone started ringing immediately. Mom, Dad, neighbors, probably reporters wanting family comments. I ignored them all. By evening, Mrs. Patterson was knocking on my door with an update. "Your parents are devastated," she reported. "Your mother hasn't stopped crying, and your father had to be taken to the emergency room for chest pains." They had no idea what she was involved in. Dad in the emergency room. The stress of learning about Bethany's crimes on top of their financial crisis was literally killing him. "Magnus, I think they need you now more than they ever have, but not to fix their money problems. They need you because you're the only family they have left who isn't a criminal." She was right. Despite everything they had put me through, they were still my parents. They had made terrible decisions and treated me unfairly, but they didn't deserve to be victimized by their own daughter. It was time to go home and see if anything could be salvaged from the wreckage Bethany had left behind. I waited until the foreclosure auction was scheduled to make my move. 6 weeks after Bethany's arrest, First National Bank was preparing to sell our family home on the courthouse steps. I knew the date, the time, and exactly how much cash I would need to outbid any competing investors. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was about to buy the house I had been saving for 10 years. During those 6 weeks, I had been busy. While my parents struggled with the reality of their situation, and Bethany sat in county jail awaiting federal trial, I had been working with an attorney and a financial planner to prepare for this moment. My lawyer, David Reeves, had helped me understand my options. "You've got a unique situation here, Magnus. You've been the de facto owner of this property for years, even though your name isn't on the deed. You've made the payments, maintained the property, and invested your own money in improvements. You have a strong legal claim to compensation, but I wasn't interested in legal claims. I was interested in justice. My financial planner, Maria Santos, had run the numbers on buying the house at auction. With my decade of steady employment and perfect payment history, I qualified for a conventional mortgage that would let me purchase the property and assume responsibility for the existing debt. "Are you sure you want to take this on?" Maria asked during our final meeting. "You'd be voluntarily accepting the same financial burden you just escaped from." "Not the same burden," I corrected. "This time it comes with ownership and boundaries." The morning of the auction, I arrived at the courthouse 45 minutes early. I wanted to watch my parents' faces when they realized what I was about to do. They were standing near the courthouse steps with the lost expressions of people who had run out of options. Dad looked like he had aged 5 years in 6 weeks. Mom kept dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. They were about to watch their home of 30 years get sold to strangers. When they saw me approaching, Mom broke down completely. Magnus. Oh, honey, you came. She threw her arms around me like I was a returning soldier. I'm so sorry. We're so sorry. We had no idea what Bethany was involved in. We had no idea what you had been doing for us. Dad just stood there looking broken. Son, I don't know how to apologize for the way we treated you. We were blind to everything you sacrificed. We chose a criminal over the person who had been saving us for years. Their apologies felt hollow after everything I had been through, but I could see the genuine remorse in their faces. They understood now what they had lost when they pushed me away. Where are you going to live after the auction? I asked. We found a little apartment across town, Mom said quietly. It's not much, but it's what we can afford on our income. We'll manage somehow. A little apartment across town. After 30 years in their family home, they were about to become renters living on the margins of poverty. The comfortable retirement they had taken for granted was gone forever. The auctioneer began the proceedings at exactly 10 o'clock. We are here today to auction the property at 427 Oak Street. Opening bid is $150,000. A few investors raised their hands, making incremental bids. The price climbed slowly, $161.71.80. My parents watched in numb silence as strangers bid on their life. When the bidding reached $200,000, most of the investors dropped out. At $220, only two bidders remained: me and a guy in a business suit who was probably planning to flip the property. At $225, the suit called out. $230, I responded. My parents looked at me in confusion. Why was I bidding on their house? $235, the suit countered. $250, I said firmly. That was enough to scare off the competition. The auctioneer called for final bids, and when none came, he pointed at me. Sold for $250,000 to bidder number 12. The crowd began to disperse, but my parents stood frozen in place. Magnus, Dad whispered. What just happened? Did you just buy our house? I bought my house, I corrected. The house I've been paying for since I was 22. Over the next hour, I completed the paperwork and financial transfers that made me the legal owner of the property. My parents watched in stunned silence as I signed documents and wrote checks. When everything was finalized, I walked over to where they were sitting on a courthouse bench. Here's how this is going to work, I said, sitting down beside them. You can live in the house as my tenants. Rent will be $800 per month, which covers your share of property taxes and insurance. That's exactly what you can afford on your combined income. They stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. But there will be rules, I continued. No more financial decisions made without my approval. No more hiding debt or spending money you don't have. No more taking my support for granted. Son, Dad started to speak, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. You will attend financial literacy classes at the community center. You will contribute to household maintenance instead of expecting me to handle everything. And you will never ever again choose anyone over family without understanding what you're choosing. Mom was crying again, but this time it looked like relief. Does this mean, can we really stay in our home? If you agree to my terms, yes. But if you ever treat me the way you treated me before, if you ever take my help for granted again, you'll be finding your own place to live. I love you both, but love has to go both ways now. Dad was nodding emphatically. Whatever you want, son. Whatever rules you set. We understand now what you did for us, and we understand what we almost lost. There's one more thing, I said. Bethany is not welcome in this house. Ever. She made her choices, and those choices could have destroyed this family. I won't risk our safety or stability for someone who spent years lying to us. They agreed to everything without hesitation. The desperate situation had finally taught them the value of what they had thoughtlessly discarded. 6 months later, we were all living under the new arrangement. Mom and Dad were model tenants who paid their rent on time and contributed to household tasks. They attended their financial classes religiously and had learned to live within their means. Dad's health had improved dramatically once the stress of hidden debt was removed. Mom had started volunteering with an elder abuse prevention program, sharing her story to help other families avoid the mistakes they had made. I moved back into my childhood bedroom, but the relationship was completely different now. Instead of being the invisible caretaker, I was the respected owner and landlord. Instead of being taken for granted, my contributions were acknowledged and appreciated. They asked about my plans for marriage and children now, instead of assuming I would always be available to handle their problems. They celebrated my promotion at work and my new relationship with Jennifer, the nurse I had started dating. The house felt like home again, but home with boundaries, respect, and mutual appreciation. Most importantly, they understood that family isn't about obligation. It's about choice. And when people choose to treat you well, you choose to help them. When they choose to treat you poorly, you choose to protect yourself. I had learned that love without respect is manipulation. Sacrifice without appreciation is exploitation. And sometimes walking away is the only way to save the relationship. One year, after the courthouse auction, I was sitting at the kitchen table that used to represent my servitude, reviewing the monthly household budget with parents who had finally learned to respect both money and the person managing it. Insurance payment is due next week. Dad noted checking items off the list we had established. I'll handle that from our account. And I scheduled the furnace maintenance, Mom added. The technician said we're smart to keep up with regular service instead of waiting for emergency repairs. Smart to keep up with regular maintenance. For the first time in 10 years, they were actively participating in home ownership instead of expecting someone else to handle all responsibilities invisibly. The transformation had been remarkable. Dad now managed their personal budget with the attention of someone who understood consequences. Mom had become an advocate for elder financial protection, speaking at community centers about the warning signs of family financial abuse. You know, Dad said, looking up from the budget papers, I was thinking about something yesterday. Remember how we used to brag about Bethany's independence and success? I nodded, curious where this was going. We were celebrating fake independence while punishing real independence. You were actually independent and successful, working multiple jobs and managing complex finances. But because you were helping family, we treated you like you were failing at life. It was the clearest acknowledgement yet of how backwards their thinking had been. They had praised Bethany for qualities she didn't possess while criticizing me for qualities I demonstrated every day. We were so worried about you not having your own life that we never noticed you were sacrificing your life for ours. Mom added quietly, real independence is being able to help others. Fake independence is needing others to help you while pretending you don't. Their insight was hard-won and deeply appreciated. Understanding the difference between genuine success and performance had cost them their comfortable retirement and nearly cost them their family. My phone buzzed with a text message. Jennifer was confirming our dinner plans for that evening. We had been dating for 8 months, and she understood both my family situation and my need for clear boundaries in relationships. "How's Jennifer doing with her nursing program?" Mom asked. She had learned to take genuine interest in my life instead of just assuming I existed to serve theirs. "She graduates next month. I'm really proud of how hard she's worked for this. We should have her over for dinner to celebrate," Dad suggested. "I'll cook that lasagna recipe I've been practicing." Dad cooking dinner was another sign of how much had changed. He had learned to contribute to household management instead of expecting to be served. He took pride in developing domestic skills instead of treating them as beneath his attention. The biggest change was in how they talked about Bethany's situation. Instead of making excuses for her crimes or expressing sympathy for her imprisonment, they had accepted that she was responsible for her choices and consequences. "I got a letter from her last week," Mom mentioned carefully. "She's asking if we'll visit her in prison and put money in her commissary account." "What did you tell her?" "I told her no. For the first time in her life, she needs to face consequences without family cleaning up her mess." That boundary represented years of growth. Previously, they would have felt guilty for not helping her, would have rationalized her behavior, would have asked me to contribute money for her support. Now, they understood that helping someone avoid consequences is not actually helping them. "She wrote that she's learned her lesson and just wants a second chance," Dad added. "But some lessons are too expensive to need learning twice." She had 30 years of second chances with this family. During the past year, we had learned more details about Bethany's criminal enterprise. She hadn't been a naive participant manipulated by her boyfriend. She had been a calculating partner who specialized in targeting elderly victims because they trusted young women more readily than they trusted men. Her method had been particularly cruel. She would develop friendships with seniors on social media, learning about their families, their health problems, their financial fears. Then she would present herself as a successful young investor who could help them achieve security and leave better inheritance for their children. The victims weren't just statistics. They were people like our parents, retirees, who had worked their entire lives and wanted to make their money last. Grandparents trying to leave something for their grandchildren. Elderly couples facing medical expenses and uncertain futures. Bethany had stolen their peace of mind along with their money. She had destroyed families and retirement dreams to fund her own lifestyle. The fact that she had come home and immediately tried to manipulate our parents using the same techniques she used on her victims made her crimes even more personal. "I think about Mrs. Williams sometimes," Mom said sadly. "The woman from the news coverage who lost her entire retirement savings to Bethany's scheme. She was 83 years old, and now she has to live with her children because she can't afford her own place anymore." Mrs. Williams had been one of the most sympathetic victims featured in news coverage. She had trusted Bethany with her life savings because that sweet girl reminded me of my own granddaughter. Bethany had cleaned out her accounts and disappeared, while Mrs. Williams was recovering from surgery. "That could have been us," Dad acknowledged. "If you hadn't been protecting us all these years, we could have been vulnerable to someone like Bethany. In a way, we were vulnerable to someone like Bethany. We just got lucky that she was family instead of a stranger." The parallel was uncomfortable but accurate. Our family's financial ignorance and willingness to be impressed by success stories had made us perfect targets for exactly the type of scheme Bethany operated. If I hadn't been quietly managing everything, they might have fallen for her manipulation even more completely. My phone rang with Dorothy Henderson's number from the bank. We had maintained a friendly relationship since the drama of Bethany's financial takeover attempt. "Magnus, I wanted to let you know that we got a call from the Federal Bureau of Prisons today. Apparently, Bethany has been trying to open bank accounts from prison using your parents' information. Just wanted to make sure you knew she was still attempting financial crimes. Even from federal prison, Bethany was trying to victimize our family. The woman who had spent 30 years being treated like royalty by our parents was attempting to commit identity theft against them, while serving time for defrauding strangers. Thanks for the heads up, Dorothy. We'll watch for any suspicious activity. After I hung up, I shared the information with my parents. Instead of making excuses for her behavior, they simply looked sad. I keep thinking about where we went wrong with her, Mom said. We gave her everything she wanted, praised her for things she didn't earn, and never taught her that actions have consequences. Maybe that's exactly where we went wrong, Dad replied. We protected her from reality instead of preparing her for reality. We made her think the world owed her success without effort. Their analysis was probably correct. By constantly celebrating Bethany's mediocre achievements while taking my exceptional contributions for granted, they had taught both of us the wrong lessons about life. They had taught her that charm and manipulation were more valuable than hard work and reliability. They had taught me that sacrifice and dedication would be rewarded with more sacrifice and less recognition. It had taken a catastrophe for everyone to learn better. 6 months later, I was standing in the backyard with Dad planting tomatoes in the garden we had decided to start together. It was symbolic of everything our relationship had become collaborative effort that would produce something valuable if we both did our part. You know what I've realized, Dad said, tamping soil around a tomato seedling. All those years we spent worrying about you not having your own life. You were actually building something much more valuable than what Bethany had. What's that? Character, reliability, the ability to handle responsibility without falling apart. Those are the things that matter when life gets difficult. He was right. While Bethany had been building an image of success, I had been building actual competence. While she was learning how to manipulate people, I was learning how to solve problems. While she was avoiding responsibility, I was accepting it. I've been thinking about writing a letter, Dad continued. Not to Bethany, but to the families of her victims, apologizing for not raising her better, letting them know that her family doesn't condone what she did. The idea was thoughtful and mature. Taking responsibility for family behavior without making excuses or deflecting blame. I think that would be meaningful to them. I agreed. Mom appeared at the back door holding lemonade and wearing the satisfied expression of someone who had just balanced the household checkbook to the penny. Financial management had become a source of pride for her instead of a source of stress. Jennifer called, she announced. She passed her nursing boards. She's officially a registered nurse. Jennifer's success felt like a family celebration. In the past, my personal achievements had been overshadowed by whatever drama Bethany was creating. Now, my accomplishments and relationships were treated as important family events. We should take her out for dinner to celebrate, Dad suggested. That fancy Italian place downtown. A year ago, fancy dinner out would have been financially impossible. Now, with everyone contributing responsibly and living within defined means, we could afford occasional celebrations. That evening, the four of us sat around a restaurant table celebrating Jennifer's achievement and our family's recovery. Jennifer had heard the entire story of our family's near destruction and rebuilding. She understood why boundaries were so important to me, and she respected the careful balance we had established. I have something to share with you all, Jennifer said as we finished dinner. Magnus asked me to move in with him, and I said yes. The announcement created an interesting moment. In the old family dynamic, my parents would have worried about losing their caretaker. In the new dynamic, they were genuinely happy that I was building my own life while maintaining healthy family relationships. "That's wonderful," Mom exclaimed. "You two are perfect for each other. Just promise us you'll keep coming to family dinners," Dad added with a smile. "We're still learning how to appreciate what we have." 6 months after that, Jennifer and I were engaged. A year later, we were married in a simple ceremony in our backyard, surrounded by family who had learned to treasure genuine relationships over artificial ones. 2 years after the foreclosure auction, I received word that Bethany had been denied parole and would serve her full 20-year sentence. The parole board had noted that she showed no genuine remorse for her crimes and continued to blame others for her situation. My parents expressed no desire to appeal on her behalf or provide character references. They had learned that real love sometimes means allowing people to face the consequences of their choices. 5 years after I bought the house at auction, Dad had his second heart attack. This time, instead of hiding his condition and pretending everything was fine, he immediately went to the emergency room and called the family for support. During his recovery, instead of expecting me to handle everything invisibly, he and Mom actively participated in managing his care and coordinating with medical providers. They had learned that being helped is different from being helpless. "I've been thinking about something," Dad said from his hospital bed. "All those years when you were working yourself to death for us, we told ourselves we were being good parents by not asking too many questions about money. We thought we were sparing you from worry. What do you think now? I think we were being cowards. We didn't want to know how bad things were, because then we would have felt guilty for living comfortably. It was easier to stay ignorant and let you carry the burden alone." His honesty was painful but necessary. Acknowledging the willful ignorance that had enabled my exploitation was part of ensuring it never happened again. "But you know what's different now," he continued. "I'm not scared of the truth anymore. Whatever challenges we face as a family, we face them together with complete honesty. No more secrets, no more hidden sacrifices, no more taking anyone for granted." That promise had held true through 5 years of medical issues, financial decisions, and family milestones. We had built a relationship based on mutual respect, clear communication, and shared responsibility. Jennifer and I now live in our own home 3 blocks away from the family house. We have dinner with my parents twice a week and spend holidays together. Our relationship with them is strong because it's honest. My parents live comfortably but modestly in the house I own, and they rent. They contribute to their own support, participate in household decisions, and treat me as a respected family member rather than an invisible caretaker. They volunteer with elder abuse prevention programs, sharing their story to help other families recognize financial manipulation and exploitation. Their experience with Bethany's crimes has made them valuable advocates for seniors facing family financial abuse. Most importantly, we have all learned the difference between love and exploitation, between helping and enabling, between family loyalty and family manipulation. The greatest lesson from our family's near destruction is that respect must be mutual. Love without boundaries becomes dependency. Sacrifice without appreciation becomes resentment. Family obligation without reciprocity becomes exploitation. Real families support each other through clear communication, shared responsibility, and mutual respect. They don't survive on one person's invisible sacrifice, while others take credit for stability they didn't create. I learned that sometimes walking away is the only way to save a relationship. Sometimes people need to lose what they take for granted before they can appreciate its value. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is allow someone to face the consequences of their choices. Our family survived because we all learned to choose respect over comfort, honesty over convenience, and mutual support over one-sided sacrifice. Today, when people ask me about family loyalty, I tell them this loyalty is earned through mutual respect, not demanded through obligation. Family members who treat you well deserve your support. Family members who exploit your goodness deserve your boundaries. Love doesn't require you to accept mistreatment. Real love requires honesty, accountability, and respect from everyone involved. The strongest families are built on choice, not obligation. When people choose to treat you with respect, you choose to be loyal to them. When they choose to take you for granted, you choose to protect yourself. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your family is teaching them that your love has boundaries, your support has conditions, and your sacrifice has limits. Those boundaries don't weaken families. They save them. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt taken for granted by family members who demanded everything while appreciating nothing? Have you learned the hard way that some people only value what they might lose? How do you balance family loyalty with self-respect when the two seem to conflict? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else recognize when family love has become family exploitation. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about standing up for yourself when the people closest to you take you for granted. And if you know someone who's sacrificing everything for ungrateful family members, please share this story with them. Sometimes we need to hear about someone else's experience before we can recognize our own situation clearly. Thanks for listening to my story. And remember, the people who truly love you will respect your boundaries, not punish you for having them.